I want to welcome you to Moving Well. I teach a class called Feldenkrais. You'll also see it as neuromovement. It's a method that helps you stay young and flexible and functional into your old age. And then I teach this class at Addison Township Senior Center every Tuesday morning from 9:30 to 10:30. And you're most welcome to come join us and check it out. All right, welcome to neuromovement, Feldenkrais awareness through movement, and it's also known as, you may hear the JKM, the Jeremy Krause method. The work is all based on Moshe Feldenkrais' work, who started teaching this way back in the 40s, and he was one of these brains way ahead of his time, and he was teaching then what we are now learning, and science is proving in the whole field of neuroplasticity, the amazing power of our brain. And how many of you heard when you were in grade school and so on that you only use 10% of your brain? Okay, it wasn't just in North Dakota that we were retarded. All right.
One country.
So, well, basically that means there's 90% of us for us to tap into, right? So that's what this work is all about, one of the many things. So basically, I'm going to read you a description of Anat Baniel's method that she calls neuromovement. She happened to be my teacher. Neuromovement is a holistic approach to human functioning and action based in the understanding that movement is the language of the brain. Movement provides information the brain needs to grow and organize itself, and in return, the brain organizes all movement, thought, feelings, and actions. So she also identified what she calls the 9 essentials for brain communication. And we will focus on different ones of these at different times. But basically, you want to be moving, just paying attention to yourself, paying attention to what you sense and feel. And when we do that, it gives our brain information that can literally begin to reorganize us to be more comfortable and more functional in our body. When we move quickly, we can only do our habits. So this isn't different than, regular exercises where you tend to want to stretch and elongate muscles, which is good, but not in this work. So in this work, you want to slow down. If a movement is difficult or uncomfortable, just slow way down and proceed slower with a movement, or even just stop and imagine it. Because we've known for a long time now that if we imagine things, it actually makes changes in our body. And you've heard of athletes that do a lot of imagining in their practices. So remember that when you're on the floor. So slowing down, paying attention. Enthusiasm is another one. I'm just picking a few of them today. When you notice a change in yourself, let yourself get a little excited about it. Excitement ramps up the attention of the brain. So, the other thing that I want you to know is that, in kids, there's actually a learning switch in our brain, and that's why they are able to learn so rapidly. They're learning so much at young ages. And as we go on in life, and life does what it does, our learning switch actually gets turned off. But the good news is we can turn it on again by engaging the essentials and revving up our own brain to learn and make changes. So we start out by paying attention to what we're sensing and feeling. So I'd like you to lay on the floor just to feel how you are in contact with the floor. And we've done the types of scan many times. This will be just a brief one.
What?
Just keep your mouth closed.
Crawl around, so it's not going to be pleasant.
So
So just lie on your back, stretch out your legs, rest your arms at your sides. And then just for a minute or two, feel how your back is lying on the floor. Feel how your legs are resting on the floor. Notice if one leg feels slightly longer than the other, maybe more relaxed than the other. Are there some parts of your lower back that are touching the floor and maybe others that are not? And then feel how your spine is resting on the floor. Notice that some of the vertebrae are touching the floor more closely than others. And attending to our spine, that flat bone in the middle of your pelvis that you're resting on, notice what part of it you're resting on. That's the base of your spine. And then at where your low back begins, there are 5 lumbar vertebrae. And then they attach to the 12 thoracic vertebrae, and they're called thoracic because they connect to our ribs. And when you get to the base of your neck, you'll notice that there's a large, you can reach back there and feel it, a larger vertebra, and it's called C7, the 7th cervical. There are 7 cervical vertebrae in your neck. And the reason I wanted to point this out is because each vertebra is designed to rotate just a little bit. But if each vertebra is free and available and rotates just a little bit, we have the physical ability to turn 90 to 180 degrees and look behind us. And you've probably seen children that have been able to rotate that way. But it may be a long time since you've done that. But so now feel how your shoulder blades are in contact with the floor. Is one more in contact with the other than the other? Feel how your arms are resting on the floor, your right arm, your left arm. Are your hands touching the floor in the same way or differently? Just notice how far from your body your hands are. And then feel the way your head is resting on the floor. Does it feel a little closer to the right shoulder or the left shoulder, or is it exactly in the middle? Imagine that you draw a plumb line from your nose, the tip of your nose, straight down, and notice where does it land in relationship to your feet? Is it right in between? More to the right foot, more to the left foot? Just notice what is. And because our brain loves contrast, we'll have you lay down again at the end of the lesson just to take a few moments to notice the difference, which again is just information for your brain. So now when you're ready, you can slowly roll to your side and come to sit on your chair. And you'll want to,
Up all the creaks.
yeah. You'll want your mat far enough away so that you can slide forward on your chair and your thighs are free. Your 2 sit bones. Can everybody see the skeleton here? Your 2 sit bones right here, that's what you feel yourself sitting on. Okay, and then just take a look at the spine and picture your spine and imagining it being able to turn, each one just a little bit. And to flex or to extend just a little bit. And this lesson is designed for you to learn to use your entire spine in bending and flexing. So a reminder just to go slowly, make each movement small, and relax as much as you can. And rest briefly after each movement. So sit as you normally do in a chair right now to begin with. Just again, just to give your brain an opportunity to feel the contrast. Notice, do your feet touch the floor or do they not? You might want to take your flip-flops off so your feet feel the floor. Thanks. And now, sitting in that position, just move your head gently up and down as if you're looking up and looking down. And do it in, stay in the range of ease to just notice what is your range of ease right now. And as you're doing this, notice what happens in your chest, what happens in your shoulders, what happens in your upper back, and if you're leaning against the back of your chair, sense any change in the contact or the pressure of your back against the chair. Remember to do the movement slowly and sense easily, breathe freely. Often when we're doing something new, we have a tendency to hold our breath. So just notice if there's a time that you do that. So just gently up and gently down. Now, as you're nodding your head up and down, notice what you do spontaneously with your eyes. Notice, are you looking forward continuously as if you're watching something? Do your eyes move passively with your head? Or are you actively looking up and down? And then continue to nod your head yes, and look down as you lower your head and look up as you raise your head. And you can do it with your eyes closed or with your eyes open. And just notice, does coordinating your head and your eyes change the way you nod your head? And then just pause for a moment. Take a moment to notice how you've been sitting. And are you leaning against the back of the chair? Are your legs symmetrical or asymmetrical in some way? Do both your feet feel contact with the floor in the same way? Now, come forward on your chair so that your sit bones are still on the chair, but your thigh is freed up. And if you have to move your mat out of the way, do that. Because if it's too close, you may have a tendency to inadvertently hold back. So make sure you have plenty of plenty of space for your feet. And now, just let your hands rest on your thighs. And again, slowly move your head up and down. Notice, does your head move any further or any easier? Any more comfortably? As you're doing this now, are you maybe more aware of your shoulders? Or your chest? Or your back? Can you sense movement further down your spine? is there any movement in your pelvis as you're nodding your head? Yes. Notice, is there a subtle shift of your weight front to back as you're nodding your head? Can you sense any kind of rocking on your sit bones as you're nodding your head? Now, you can let that go for a moment and just pause, just to take a moment to feel anything you notice that is different. Sometimes a sense of quiet begins to set in. Now, begin to tilt your pelvis backwards. So you're going to kind of rock backward on your sit bones in the range that's comfortable and easy. And then straighten up, rock back up on your sit bones. So when you're rocking back on your sit bones, that's the classic opportunity to slouch. So go ahead and slouch. I know we've been corrected forever about not slouching. And therefore we develop some habits for righting ourselves that are actually not helpful to our necks. So now I give you full permission to totally slouch. Picture your whole spine and picture your whole spine slouching. So you gently slouch or slump in your chair as you rock your pelvis backward. And then you rock it forward and straighten and become taller as you tilt your pelvis forward. Notice when you inhale and when you exhale. Notice how tilting your pelvis involves your hip joints and your whole spine. And then just come back to neutral. You may notice that you have a new neutral already. Just come back and rest in your current state of neutral. If you want to lean against the back of the chair to rest, you can. It may feel a little different even leaning against the back of the chair. Anytime we stop to rest, feel free to slide back and just lean against the back of the chair. And then come forward again. And again, go back to tilting your pelvis forward and backwards. So you're slouching. And notice what shape you can imagine your spine is in now. Does it form like a nice, even C curve? Or are there parts that tend to be more available for flexing and rounding? A lot of people come for treatment for neck and low back pain. That's really prevalent in our society. And usually, in most modalities, if you come with a complaint of neck pain, the neck gets addressed. If you come with complaint of low back pain, the low back gets addressed. However, what's in between the low back and the neck is often the cause, because our rib cage and our thoracic spine tend to get very rigid and locked up with life. As we go through life with fears and shocks and just life, we tend to hold our chest. We tend to kind of take a breath in and don't fully exhale. And therefore, in between every rib, as you can see see the ribs here, in between every single rib are muscles. And the ribs are attached with cartilage. Cartilage is flexible like your nose. And so they're all designed to be flexible, pliable, and movable. And when our rib cage in this area gets freed up, it takes the pressure off our neck and our shoulders and our low back. Now come back forward on your chair again. And now go back, come forward so your sit bones are still on but your thighs are free. And go back to flexing and extending. Start out doing it in real slow motion, paying attention to what becomes available in that area between your neck and your low back. Remembering that there's cartilage, it's flexible, it's pliable. And don't try to force anything. It's more about allowing something, like taking a breath and exhaling, relaxing. So you kind of relax into it. So as you're rolling your pelvis backwards and forwards, can you feel your pelvis rotating around your hip joint, the top of your leg bone? If you want to take a look, you can see how our leg comes up. It's shaped kind of like this. This is our leg. It comes up, and then you've got the ball that goes into the socket of the pelvis. And so if we're rocking our pelvis, it's designed so that the pelvis can roll around the hip joint. I think I've mentioned before that the hips are a ball and socket joint, our shoulders are a ball and socket joint, and just as our arms are designed to go around in a complete circle, our hips are literally designed to do that. Now, you don't usually see that happening except in a gymnast. Do you remember seeing a gymnast with her leg up to the side like this? Well, don't try it today. So,
I used to be able to put my foot behind my neck. I'm not going to try that.
oh, good. Okay, then go ahead, lean against the back of your chair and rest. And come forward again. Come forward. Good. Okay. Now check where your feet are in relation to your knees and in relation to your hips. Now, again, begin to nod your head, but include your whole spine in the nodding. So you're going to make a gentle movement yet, but a larger movement. So you're going back to rolling your pelvis back. Remember, we've got these huge muscles that attach our thighs to our pelvis. And so we want to find the availability of our pelvis to move around our hip joint. Now the leg bone is staying stationary. So as you're doing this movement, imagine how your pelvis can roll around that hip joint. And as you do that, imagine, or can you sense, how that enlarges the movement of your spine, enhances the movement of your spine. Now, as you're doing this, think of adding one vertebra at a time. As your pelvis rolls back at the top of your sacrum, your lumbar vertebra begin. So imagine one vertebra at a time becoming available to move. So you have 5 in your low back, 12 ribs that 12 vertebrae that attach to your ribs, all the way up to that large bone, the 7th cervical. And then you have 7 vertebrae in your neck. So there are 12 in your mid-back, that area that tends to get a little immobilized or stuck. So it's as if you're saying yes with your whole spine. See if you can sense the movement from the top of your head to the tip of your tail, and everywhere in between. And be sure to keep breathing. As you move, notice, when do you inhale and when do you exhale? Notice how far your head bends forward and your spine rounds backwards as your pelvis tilts. See if you can do this so that your spine makes a smooth, continuous curve from your sitting bones and tailbone through your lower back, your mid-back, and upper back, your neck, right into your head. Sense the movement of your ribs all around in your chest, in your sides, in your back. If you were watching yourself from the side, you'd see your spine form a big letter C. Then let it go and stop and rest again. Again, the rest is about taking time to notice any subtle changes. Maybe that you're feeling more relaxed or not. Is there any difference in your breathing?
It seems like you could do that exercise one of two ways. Either if you're bending your spine, then you could start with your lower spine and go down, and then your neck vertebrae get involved last.
Mm-hmm.
But then you could do it reverse of that. Do it top down. So if you turn here, and then, so,
You're absolutely right. And doing it both ways is powerful, to include both ways. So as you're playing with it, go ahead and do that. And there's actually a third way. You can actually imagine starting from the middle of your back and like one vertebra moving backwards, and then the one above and below it. And continuing with one above and below, so that you actually end up rounding from the middle of your back, which is probably totally different and an awesome variation to try. So everybody, go ahead and do it imagining starting at the top. And after you've done it that way, then pause for a moment to feel any repercussions from that type of movement. And then begin with thinking of it starting in the middle of your thoracic spine with one vertebra moving back, and following with the one above it and the one below it. One above and below each time. Notice, what have you been doing with your belly?
I've got this fold of fat that tends to bite itself here, I'm not sure what. Weird.
Yeah?
It's hard to
That's
breathe when you're doing the one from here.
It's hard to focus on the inhaling and exhaling, you mean? Isn't that interesting?
I
Yeah,
don't
so.
remember to breathe, all of a sudden you want to go,
That's a good point. That's real common to start holding our breath when we're focusing intently. Often you'll find you're holding your breath. And then as you come out of it, imagine you're coming out of it the same way, one vertebra at the top and the back moving back.
That's at least 3 different exercises.
3 different lessons, right? It is. All aimed at mobilizing our entire spine. Everybody stop and rest when you're ready. Complete what you're doing, and then come back and rest. Come back and rest. Again, notice what gets your attention first. Observe your breathing. Notice any shift in the way you contact the chair, any change in the way you experience your shoulder blades. And then come forward on your chair again. And this time, you choose one of those ways of rounding. It doesn't matter whether you're starting in the middle, at the top, or the bottom. But as you're doing it, intentionally inhale as you're rounding, and exhale as you're coming out of it. So you're going to start inhaling as you're rounding, and exhaling as you come out of it. And after you've done that a couple times, pause a moment. and then reverse it. Exhale as you're rounding, and inhale as you're lengthening, as you're coming out of the rounding. And notice, just is one easier than, or is one more difficult? And notice if there's one way of doing it that seems easier, makes the movement easier. And let your breathing regulate the size and the timing of your bending and straightening. If you're breathing deeply, the movement is large, and consequently it would probably be slow as well. So you're moving in one direction as long as you're breathing in, and then you reverse the direction and the movement of as you begin to breathe out.
I have difficulty breathing in when I'm leaning forward, compressing my lungs. I'm reducing the volume of, not the capacity of this.
Exactly. And I was intentionally not telling you which is the right way. This is how we learn. We want this learning in our neurology. Yeah, that's great. That's great learning. So we want it in our neurology, and we get it in our neurology by experiencing it. And when we experience it in a slow movement like this, our brain gloms onto anything that's good and easy and efficient, and will enhance our tendency to use that pattern. Real learning involves experiencing, not just following directions. And this way you are learning simultaneously to do these movements more skillfully and to be more aware and to be more autonomous. So play with it until you've identified which way of breathing is most efficient and comfortable for you. And at the same time, sense how this movement involves your hip joints, your pelvis, your lower back, your mid-back, your upper back, your ribs, your chest, your sternum, breastbone, your shoulders. Do your shoulders tend to round? Your neck and your head. Now begin to gradually make the movement smaller. So you're going to diminish the amount of back and forth of the middle of your spine, is what you're doing. You look like you're questioning, what do I mean by smaller? Am I interpreting this? Am I interpreting this correctly? So as we're doing it bigger like this, the middle of our spine moves way backwards and then comes more forward, we're more arching also. And then as we make it smaller, we go back a little less and forward a little less. But now as you're doing this, really pay attention to what are you doing with your belly. We've talked about freeing our belly. What happens if you push your belly out and roll your pelvis back? Now what happens if you gently pull your belly in and roll your pelvis back? Right. And then as you're rolling your pelvis forward, what do you do with your belly? Roll your belly forward. The idea, we were taught that we need strong abdominals, and we interpreted that mean to be suck it in and tuck it under, which does horrible things to your back, among other things. So what it's designed to do is when we round, our belly has to soften and come in and allow our back muscles to relax. When we push our belly out, for me it always causes a sigh of relief because it lets go of a lot of chronic holding. When you push your belly out, it allows your back to arch. And when we lose the arch in our low back, we lose that potential kind of springy action that we get from having curves in our spine. It allows for some freedom of springiness, flexibility there. So play with that piece for a minute. Try rolling back as you're pushing your belly out and sucking your belly in as you come forward. And then do the opposite. Gently pull your belly in as you round and collapse. And gently push your belly out. And you can think of pushing your belly, straight forward. Feel what that's like. And you can think of pushing your belly out and kind of down towards your pubic bone and rolling forward. And then just let it all go and rest. Sit back in your chair and rest for a moment. Notice how you're sitting now. What stands out in your awareness as you're sitting here now? And then one more time, come forward on your chair. And now you've experimented, so you know about what is most efficient for using your belly. You know what's most efficient for you for using your breathing. Now, as you start out rounding and righting, coming upright, start out by looking down as you round and looking up as you extend. And then pause. Now rotate just a little bit to the left so that you're kind of lined up over your left knee. So you're just rotating your torso. Your sit bones stay where they are, and you just kind of rotate so that you're over your looking over your left knee. And in this position, round. So you're going to be rounding a little bit at an angle. You'll notice that you get a little heavier on your right sit bone. Notice what you do with your belly to round and then to come out of it. you come up at a side angle. Notice how far you go comfortably. And then go back down at that angle. And then slowly rotate so that you're facing over your right knee. As you're rounded, rotate over your right knee. And in this position, push your belly out towards your right thigh. And come out of it. Arch. Notice you're arching at a little bit of an angle, waking up those vertebrae. A little more. And then go back down, rounding at that angle. And again, rotate your torso so you're facing your left knee. And again, arch. Push that belly out towards your left thigh. Get tall. And then reverse it. Come back down, rounding at that angle. Rotating over, facing your right knee. And again, pushing your belly out to your right thigh. Letting your spine arch and get tall. And then round in that direction one more time, over your right knee. This time come back to neutral. And then push your belly out, get tall. Feel your whole spine arching. And take a breath. Let your shoulder blades slide down your back. Quit holding those shoulders up. Isn't it interesting? We have such a tendency to automatically hold our shoulders up. And just thinking of your shoulder blades sliding down your back a little is a good way to put your shoulders in the right place. If we think of intentionally moving our shoulders, we generally do something like this. Let's put your head way out ahead. You don't want that. So if you think of your shoulder blades just kind of sliding down, it puts your shoulders where they are more efficiently organized. So, okay, take a few moments to feel what you notice. Notice anything that's different. Any
Twisting helped my neck.
And the twisting helped your neck. We're amazingly made. Amazingly created. That's awesome. Anybody else want to say anything?
I feel like a whole connection. Just the spinal awareness has been worth every minute I've spent here.
Yeah, it's such a vital connection. Okay, now I'm going to invite you to come to stand, but in a way that bring your head forward and your feet back a little bit. And then with your hands on your knees, take your tush off the chair and lift your tush up. Let your head hang. Let your head hang. And then come up from your lower spine. And then just stand with your feet about hip width apart. Feel how your arms hang. Notice your breathing. How deep in your torso do you feel movement as you inhale and exhale? Can you feel those shoulder blades on your back? Notice how deep in your torso your breath is going. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice, is there any difference there? Do they feel flatter? Is there more of your foot in contact with the floor? And you feel that full connection from your tailbone all the way through your spine up to the base of your head. And imagine your head perched on your spine, and then just gently turn a little, look a little left and look a little right, and feel. What's available in the turning of your head now. And then, just for contrast, we did this in sitting, but you started out laying on the floor. Just, if it's easy for you to get down to the floor, go ahead and lay on your mat for just a couple moments. Simply for the purpose of feeling anything that's different. Let's see. You still want something under your head, so
Thank you, Mom.
yeah, so that you're basically, if you think of your head and your chin being on a level plane, then you can pretty much count on your neck being well supported and organized well. So just take a few moments to feel anything that you notice in your contact with the floor.
I feel like more of my spine is on the floor now.
Mm-hmm. As we get rid of chronic muscular contractions that seem to occur because of life, that's what happens. We get a little flatter. And notice your breathing and lying down. And then with your new organization now, take a few moments to imagine 2 different ways of rolling to your side and coming to stand on the floor. And after you've imagined 2 different ways of doing that, go ahead and pick one and use it. Again, just let your arms hang. You had a little activity there in between the initial standing and now, so just take a moment to feel where you are. And then take the changes into movement and just go ahead and walk around the room.
You said, when I said something about my spine being flat, you said it's flattery. I wanted to say, flattery will get you everywhere, but I didn't say.
Well, feel the way your arms hang as you move, the way your feet connect with the floor. What kind of movement do you feel in your spine, in your rib cage? Do you feel a diagonal connection from your left shoulder blade to your right hip as you're walking? And from your right shoulder blade to your left hip?
Awareness. 99% of the world goes through life.
Yep, that's true.
Mass.
As you imagine that diagonal connection when you're walking, does it change anything in the way you walk? Or in the feeling, the sensation of yourself walking? Which, if you're more swishy, that probably means that you're using more of yourself in the movement. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody want to make any comments about what you experienced? It's not required. I just, in case somebody wants to say something about what you're.
I just want to say that my back and neck were killing me when I came in. My back feels great and my neck is feeling better.
Awesome. Great.
My shoulders feel dropped. Really good.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see it.
My shoulders.
You can see it too. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for being here and participating. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week. It's my pleasure.